Good morning, aspirants. It's 3rd of December today, and I welcome you all on today's edition of What to Read in the Hindu newspaper. I'm 𝗗𝗶𝗹𝘆 𝗡𝗲𝗄, Senior Mentor at Prepp IAS. While going through the articles, we will not only see its relevance with regard to prelims and mains, but we'll also try interlink it with other GS papers as well, trying to connect the different dots of a core concept with peripheral areas wherein different questions and dimensions could be asked. I am here to align your newspaper reading as a part of our GS syllabus. So let's get started. The very first article that catches our attention in today's paper is about DOT, that is Department of Telecommunication, order to pre-install government app triggers storm. So the story that has been explained in this particular article talks about that DOT has asked smartphone makers and telecom operators to pre-install a government app that sparks debate on consent, surveillance, concerns, and digital autonomy. This is relevant for GS Paper 2 governance, digital regulation, executive action, right to privacy under Article 21, also relevant for GS Paper 3, cyber security and data governance. For prelims perspective, we can link this particular article in manner, is pre-installation is equivalent to forced consent? Knowing about a committee for data protection, and you have to tell me which committee it is. The act for it. What is state overreach in digital governance? Constitutional test with regard to proportionality and least intrusive means that is tied with Puttaswamy judgment. Telecom operators compliance burden and the precedent it sets. For mains perspective, the same article is to be seen through the lens of, does India need a strong statutory data protection framework? For ethics paper, the same is to be seen through the lens of autonomy, informed consent, and digital dignity. This is how this article is to be seen holistically. The next important article, which is there in the paper and that catches our attention for our exam, is about 0 stars, mandating the Sanchar Sathi app to tackle cyber crime is an overkill. Again, this is relevant for GS Paper 2 governance, accountability and service delivery. Also relevant for GS Paper 4 ethics, wherein empathy and public trust could be interlinked. The key theme that has been devised in this particular article talks about administrative inefficiency leads to citizen left without grievance redressal and deterioration of state legitimacy in the time of rising cyber crimes. For prelims perspective, we have to go through the type of cyber crimes that has been there in the news. Then afterwards, the several acts that tackles cyber crime, CERT, what is digital arrest. Afterwards, knowing certain terminologies with regard to SIM, what is IMEI number. Afterwards, accountability without empowerment, need for social audits, transparency tools as solutions could be the way forward. And this is how this particular article is to be seen. The next important article that is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about this dismal state of India's environment. It is relevant for GS Paper 3 environment, climate change, pollution and conservation measures. This particular article highlights the environmental indicators such as AQI, sulfur, biodiversity, waste management, water contamination, forest quality, all the natural resources that should be safe and secure with regard to living a dignified life has been compromised, and they are worsening as the time proceeds. So for UPSC perspective, the arenas that we have to unfold while going through this particular article is why environment governance remains weak. The possible reason could be underfunding, poor monitoring, low political priorities. Then there has been legislative fatigue with regard to Environment Protection Act of 1986, Air Act, Water Act, unchanged for decades, and weak pollution boards that only is a body that has been in news, but no concrete power has been given to them. They are body merely on paper, but not without teeth to take any concrete actions. Judicial interventions in the form of NGT, Supreme Court orders, several tribunals, and bodies that actually governs the environmental related issues. India's NDC and Sustainable Development Goals. This is how this particular article is to be holistically seen. The next important article that is there in the paper and catches our attention is a template for security cooperation in the Indian Ocean. Now, this is relevant for GS Paper 2 IR and GS Paper 3 Security, Maritime Security and Blue Economy. The key context of this particular article is about Indian Ocean is becoming contested with regard to China, wherein piracy, choke points, and climate threat is rising nowadays. For UPSC prelims perspective, the arenas that we have to read and revise is knowing about Sagar Doctrine, Indian Ocean Rim Association, that is IORA, Colombo's Security Conclave, Information Fusion Center, why Indian Ocean needs multilateral maritime governance, India's leadership as a resident power and its responsibility as a part of Blue Water Navy. This is how this particular article is to be seen. The next important article which is there in the paper and that catches our attention talks about privacy in a fishbowl society, relevant for GS Paper 2 Fundamental Rights, privacy after Puttaswamy judgment, also relevant for GS Paper 3 Cyber Security. The key context that has been given in this particular article is about we live in an age where every action is tracked digitally and socially. And this article is trying to examine privacy is collapsing due to corporate surveillance, government data collections, social media oversharing, and algorithmic visibility that actually tries to overpower our mental peace at the times of repeated ads that we are seeing. Afterwards, for UPSC perspective, we need to know what is right to be forgotten, proportionality doctrine, data minimization principle, ethical issues with regard to self-censorship in digital societies. So this is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised. The last important article for the day is about WHO backs GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. Now, this is relevant for GS Paper 1 Society, GS Paper 2 Health, WHO and Global Health Governance, GS Paper 3 Science and Tech, wherein biotechnology could be a key theme to understand this particular article. This actually endorses WHO, wherein GLP-1 analog like semaglutide is used for obesity management. For prelims perspective, we need to know how actually GLP works, right? That stimulates insulin and reduces appetite. Obesity as a public health priority, data for it, cost, access and inequality concerns that we are seeing in terms of health, regulatory challenges for India, potential for misuse and ethical concerns. This is how this particular article is to be holistically read and revised from the perspective of our exam. This is all from my end for today's Hindu newspaper. Till we meet for the next time, take care and goodbye.